I'm going to call the council to a semblance of order. Welcome everybody to this regularly scheduled council meeting. I want to open with just a bit of a congratulations. This is to our fleet team over in Engineering and Public Works. We recently received our fleet rebate check from ICBC in the amount of $102,542 for the 36-month period 2009, 10, and 11, representing a 35% discount to the city, which is exceptional and comes about because of a number of initiatives. Operator and driver training, our preventative maintenance program, a well-managed ICBC claims program, and a really dedicated team of staff. Should be noted that if we have future claims, of course, that might be affected, but right now we're significantly rebated, if you will, because of the work of the staff team on fleet. Thank you so much. Madam City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to note that we do have two other onward transmittal items to add to the agenda this evening. Both reports are available on the back table there. One has to do with council member appointments to certain advisory bodies, and another one has to do with citizen appointments to the Coquitlam Evergreen Line Public Art Task Force. First item on tonight's agenda are minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, June 10th. The recommendation is that council approve those minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Hodge. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 are minutes of the Tri-Cities Homelessness and Housing Task Group meeting held Friday, June 7th. The recommendation is that council receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Hodge. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. You have to be just a bit faster, Councillor Hodge. You have to be just a bit faster.
Item 3 is report of Acting General Manager Planning and Development related to Conservation Permit Application 13006092CP for 1430 Pipeline Road. The recommendation is that council deny the permit.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Zakora, second by Councillor Nicholson to deny. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4 is report of General Manager Planning and Development related to preliminary report on applications for citywide OCP Amendment Bylaw number 4407-2013 and Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4408-2013 for a 206-unit multifamily development and expansion of the Coquitlam Community Garden at 514 to 554 Foster Avenue and 636 to 640 Aspen Street. And we do have introductory comments by General Manager Planning and Development and Manager Development Services.
Mr. McIntyre.
Thank you, Worship, and good evening, Your Worship and council members. I just wanted to provide just a few introductory comments before I turn it over to Raul Eloeva, our Manager of Development Services, to sort of walk you through the application. It's kind of a significant night, not just for the applicant, but for ourselves as well, because this represents the first application to the Coquitlam area that's come forward through and sort of springing from the TDS, Transit-Oriented Development Strategy work that was done last year. And just very briefly, Council may recall, once the plans for the Evergreen line and the station in Coquitlam were firmed up, there was a lot of interest in that area, a lot of opportunity in seeing some redevelopment happening that would be consistent with the neighborhood plan, but also some development that might sort of outstrip the existing neighborhood plan, but nonetheless how to take advantage and to provide for that opportunity, and that was through the transit-oriented development strategy work that was done last year. This application was one of the key ones that sort of sprung that piece of work, and so I'd just like to recognize that. But as well, it's been brought through, it's taken a little time, it is a significant project, and Raul will go through that in just a few minutes. It's gone through that process based on and guided by excuse me, the TDS strategy. So it's been sort of vetted through that screen, if you will. It is a fairly complicated project in a number of respects to meet the requirements of the TDS. It's taken a little bit of time because it was just the TDS to guide it. There was not a neighborhood plan overarching, but through our staff and the applicant and their consultants, they managed to work through that, and the application is at a point now where staff are very pleased to bring it forward with support. And so maybe with that, Raul, if you just want to provide an overview, that would be great.
Mr. Alwaya.
Thank you, Jim, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Just to follow up on Mr. McIntyre's comments, we did feel it appropriate to provide some overriding comments, as the application is the first of several pre-applications. There are significant pre-applications that are coming forward under the TDS, or Transit-Oriented Development Strategy, on sites that are within neighborhood plans, in this case Coquitlam, that are essentially targeted for updating later this year. And the initiation of that plan process is still to occur. Nonetheless, the TDS does allow us to review applications as well as utilize some of the policy material to outline and determine emerging policy areas that could affect applications. And staff have been busy over the last year. If you recall, the TDS was approved by Council in July 2012. So staff have been very active in implementing a number of TDS-related policy and regulatory mechanisms to support higher density in transit neighborhoods, as well as processing some of the applications that we can. And there are some challenges, and I think we've advised Council of some of these challenges, but it's worth noting some of these areas, as we will be seeing a number of these other applications come forward. In fact, more significant than this in terms of total number of units, although this one is a fairly sizable property. So this is one of 4 pre-applications in the Coquitlam neighborhood that were identified in as early as late 2011 in advance of the neighborhood plan. And these applications were effectively the impetus for the development of a policy framework eventually that became the TDS. In 2012, when Council adopted the TDS, they also indicated through the policy approval that city initiatives were required and identified to effectively manage the development in these areas in advance of neighborhood planning that was still to come. And we have been very active, and Council has approved a number of these significant initiatives, including parking. In late 2012, staff, through engineering and planning, brought forward bylaw amendments to reduce parking rates within TDS areas, as well as reductions for both in lieu of parking and transit demand management strategies. So those were approved. We also brought forward late in 2012 zoning updates to all of our mixed-use and high-density residential zones, as well to make sure that the areas around TDS had the appropriate densities and ranges of densities, both for density bonus and appropriate maximum densities, to take advantage of densities we wanted in TDS areas. Following that, we then in early 2013 brought forward the Community Amenity Contribution Program as a policy initiative in the Coquitlam area to fund a future recreational facility in the Coquitlam area. Again, this was intended to support applications. When densities increase, we want to make sure we capture density and needs for that density within these growing areas. Additional to that, staff have been working through staff as well as through consulting from individual developers in the Coquitlam area to update all our servicing requirements within these neighborhoods, including transportation requirements, new roads, new utilities, updating of utility plans, and that has taken the bulk of 11 months since the TDS was approved to go through those requirements. As Council is aware, one of the areas that is still outstanding is the rental replacement component, and that's the update to the city's housing affordability policy, and that is underway. That housing affordability policy and rental replacement issues and policies that may come out of that program haven't been identified in the TDS, and they will be important in evaluating a number of applications that we have, at least 2 significant pre-applications in the Coquitlam area that currently have rental housing on those properties. And those applicants are effectively working through a number of technical issues, but they are looking to the city to articulate more on the issue of the future of that rental property. Other areas that identified in the TDS were the updates to the DCC bylaw, which Council did approve, as well as updates to multimodal standards, which staff will be bringing forward new standards for roads to account for multiple mobility needs and update our street standards later on this year. So we've been very busy, and all of these initiatives collectively support the TDS program. The TDS, however, aside from being a very valuable policy document, it has been challenging to process applications in the absence of clearly laid out policy, which typically occurs in a neighborhood plan. And without that, it has been more challenging. And I have to give credit to the developers, not just Intercorp, but others that have been patiently working through some of these issues in essentially what's an evolving policy area. That said, we have reached significant agreement on many areas with applicants, including the Intercorp project, which we brought forward to Council tonight. A number of key elements to highlight on the Intercorp project is, number one, the community garden expansion. The issue of essentially the density and the mix of that project, the greenway connections and additional access to public areas, the community amenity contribution component, as well as additional community benefits that are proposed by Intercorp. Most notably in terms of community amenity contributions, Intercorp has proposed to add space to the community garden. The community garden is an important asset to the community, and they have voiced that. One of the issues around the community garden was the use of that community garden in terms of people having access to it. It is very busy. There's people waiting for plots, and the future of that community garden was discussed with the community as well as the Parks and Recreation and Culture Department. One of the things that was considered was the expansion, and Intercorp did propose an expansion both in terms of using a portion of their property as well as purchasing a portion of unused lane and dedicating back to the city for expansion of the garden. Additional to that, Intercorp is putting forward an additional contribution in the range of $240,000, which would be going towards a variety of potential uses by Parks and Recreation, which could include expansion of the community garden in the future, which we believe would be a consideration as part of the future Coquitlam low-heat neighborhood plan, as well as possible additional park uses and park improvements either in any other park in the Coquitlam area. It could be the community garden, but it could also be Coquitlam Park, it could be Cottonwood Park. There's a number of possible uses. And additional to that would be the policy requirement for the community amenity contribution, which is essentially a $3 per square foot contribution that is intended to go directly towards the future recreational facility in the Coquitlam area. And essentially that would also be a planned item that would come forward as part of the future neighborhood plan in the Coquitlam low-heat area. So it's important to know that we are working with developers. The policy landscape is evolving, so with each application, because all of these applications in advance of a neighborhood plan adoption are effectively OCP amendments, it is clear to most of the developers that as these come forward, the city is looking to ensure that these developments that add density and add essentially activity and burden to our community also provide for localized benefits and needs that are part of those applications. And this is one case where we feel we've been very successful with the developer in achieving those benefits. So I'm available to answer any questions as part of Council's deliberations on the bylaw. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
Oh, thank you. I thought there was somebody ahead of me, but he went off. Now he's back on. There was for a bit. One of the I got just a couple of questions and points to make. When this first came before us a year and a half ago or so, it was proposed as Intercorp, I think, had a thought about doing some townhouses there, and now it's coming back as a 5-story potential for a 5-story building. And the initial consultation that Intercorp did was over a townhouse, and it got generally some positive response. But now, of course, that's all changed. What we have in our package is now series of comment sheets, City of Coquitlam, in which there's about 24 of them, in which all the comments are identical and written in the same hand with identical wording, but each has a different name and address attached to it. So my question on this particular point, leading up to summarizing all the public commentary so far, and I'm sure if we go to public hearing, we'll hear more, is what sort of confidence do we have that the people who signed these comment sheets actually saw the comments before they signed them, or maybe they were given blank sheets to sign and that these were added later? It's a little odd with all of these being in the same hand with exactly the same wording. So I don't know, is there a quality control check that the city does on these things, or what? Somebody can answer that for me.
Your Worship, we did note in the report exactly the comment that Councillor O'Neill is mentioning. We have noted a number of them are identical. We have to take them as individual submissions. They're signed, so even though someone writes the content, we have to accept them as submissions from the owner that signed the actual form. That said, you also can note that those sheets also note on the expansion of the community garden. So they all appear to be discussing both issues. What is notable is that it is true when the original developer went out to the community about 1.5 years ago, I think the proposal was 123 townhouse units, although the blocks of units were exactly identical over 80 or 90% of the site. It's only the corner property, the corner site, where the apartment building is, where instead of 90 units, whatever the apartments, I think 99 apartments, it would be in the order of another 15 townhouse units. But those are located behind the community garden. There's an apartment across Whiting Way. It was felt that that location, in reference to the TDS and the busy location of Foster and Whiting Way, in close proximity to Clark, it would be an optimal location for a change in form and density, and for a different type of unit. And the developer agreed, and it's also a very, very well designed, it's very, very uniquely designed building, one of the more postmodern building designs that we've seen in the Coquitlam area. We're very excited about the design. It is true the original consultation by the developer at that time was only townhousing. However, the majority of the site has remained without change from that original plan. It's only a small portion on the westerly side, and that has a very, very good interface because of the major open space the developer's providing at that location to separate the building, plus the community garden location.
Now, until now, when we talked about medium density, we were talking 3 or 4 stories in Coquitlam. Would this be the first 5-story medium density that we'd see in Coquitlam? I lost track of where we are here, but it's not too common, is it?
It isn't uncommon. Typically, of the first story, the lower story is the concrete. Concrete would come up to the first level. Typically, there's a 4-story wood frame above that. That isn't that uncommon. The 6-story wood frame product is very uncommon. No such buildings have yet been built in the region. A couple, I think 1 or 2 are under construction. This building has a 6th level, in fact, but only because the parkade protrudes on the southwest part of the property. By and large, the majority of this building is a 5-story building, but it's really a 4-story wood frame above an extended parkade structure. So it's not uncommon.
Oh, I see. Okay. Because I was in Port Coquitlam recently, and I saw what definitely looked like a 5-story residential wood frame building going up, and this is not what this is then. Okay, that's different. Good. And one of the things that the residents in the area have talked about in the past, and it actually came up in our discussions 1.5 years ago, was the transition from the high-density core in Coquitlam to down to the lower levels where eventually it's just single family. Now, right now, if this proposal were to go through, we would be going to medium density, and right across the street, it's still single family. Right across the street to the south, it's still single family. Is that not right? The south and the east? one family residential, RT1, two family residential, and P1 civic and major institutional. Would we expect going forward in the coming months or years, as we take a broader look, that these areas would be looked at for rezoning as well?
Your Worship, the properties on Ebert, which are south of the lane, are designated for one-family residential. There's some duplexes, et cetera. However, the majority of this project is a three-story, effectively a three-story townhouse. So the transition is actually quite effective on 80 or 90% of this transition. When it comes to the apartment building, if you look at the furthest corner of the apartment building closest to the single family, it's actually quite a distance away because there's a very, very large open space which the apartment building will create. So we feel the design is very, very effective because the main part of the apartment building facing south is actually next to the community garden. There's no properties there.
Great, good.
So it's been very, very well designed from an interface perspective. Properties across Foster are 3 to 4 story apartments designated for higher density. Across Whiting Way is also a 4-story apartment. We've got Mosaic to the north, further to the east on Como Lake. So the interface to the north towards the transit station is actually quite an effective interface.
Good. Yes, I was just interested in the interface to the south, and that's good. Good answers. Thank you very much. I'll be supporting this going forward from today. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, it is only 4 stories of wood. We get the 5th floor because we've actually built on top of a cement floor?
Yes, perhaps Evan Allegretto, who's here, can from Intercorp. I wanted to make sure the distinction is that it isn't a 6-story wood frame engineered wood product, which is a very unusual building type. Maybe Evan, you can come out and if you don't mind, if council is okay with that.
At the back.
So, apologies, Evan Allegretto with Intercorp. If council would like some questions answered, he's available.
Okay.
Sorry.
Objection from council. One moment, please. You have to state your name and address for the record. And
Evan Allegretto. I live at 1189 Melville Street in Vancouver.
okay.
To address your question, it's a 4.5-story building. So yes, there's 5 stories of wood at some portions of the building, but because of the slope of the site, there's a portion along Foster that's 4 stories, and the majority of the building's 5-story. At the top story sets back, so there's 4 full stories, and then the 5th story sets back, but it is wood, so it's effectively 5 stories in height.
So you're using the 6-story wood frame provisions, the NFPA 13 and stuff?
Well, it's not actual 6-story.
I understand, but it's not 4-story, so you're using the 6-story provisions?
Of the new
Building
bylaw,
code?
yeah, the new
okay.
building codes.
Which requires a full commercial sprinkler system, not a...
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's being built to the standards. I'm thinking the fire ratings, we've had a lot of discussion locally throughout the Lower Mainland about going beyond 4 stories with wood. We haven't done it here yet, but I know the building codes have been changed, and that's why I'm sort of getting at is it a 4, is it a 5? And what we're really saying is a 4.5, but it's going to be built to the standards of the 6.
Yeah, it's got the fire system of a 6. It's, we've built 5 now twice in North Vancouver. We actually haven't had any problems related to fire sprinkling or anything like that. From our experience, the big change between a 4-story and a 5-story is just structurally.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor
One other thing, just a couple more questions, but one is that...
Sorry, while you're here, are there any other council members that have questions for the representative? No? Okay. Councillor O'Neill does. Could you activate Councillor O'Neill's microphone? We'll just set aside Councillor Hodge for a moment.
There you go. Okay, I'm back. Just clarification on this again. So, Mr. Alabay has talked about a concrete first floor and then 4 wood above it. You're saying it's concrete basement and parkade and then 5 wood above that?
Yeah. So it's one slab, of concrete. So it's one slab of concrete above the parkade and then wood all above it.
So 5 wood floors above that?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, then based on that, do we have anything like that in Coquitlam now?
That's not a question.
Okay, we don't. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
And this was where I was going with it. If we don't, that's good, thank you. Question to staff.
Thank you very much.
Is that this is sort of, although it's within the building code, this is new. I'm assuming we have been in consultation with our fire department on this, and
Yes.
certainly I'd like to hear more from that as this proceeds through the various readings.
Your Worship, yes, we have consulted. It isn't the distinction I was trying to make. Apologize for the confusion. Is that it isn't the full 6-story wood frame engineered product, which we're still waiting to see in Coquitlam and in many areas. The 5-story is a little bit more common, but we haven't seen it in Coquitlam. But yes, we have consulted the fire department on this matter.
Okay, good. Next question, on page 6 of the staff report here, TDS Objective 6, manage parking. And under parking, it says the proposal generally complies with TDS. Just wondering if you could define generally.
Your Worship, great question. I wrote that one myself. At this point, the project is still evolving, and as you know, under the TDS, in the shoulder area, there's a variety of options available to the developer in terms of parking allowances. So because the project isn't completed yet, and we don't know the total number of units, and the total number of 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom, that's going to evolve in the next few months as the design gets clarified. Then we'll know exactly what we are facing. But the goal is to achieve all of the parking, but we couldn't really determine exactly how much and the total number. There are also some unique treatments of the townhouse units as well. There's some small cars within the townhouse units themselves. So there's some elements that we'll be bringing forward with details at the development permit stage for council once we finalize the total number of unit types and number of stalls.
I noticed in here when we're talking parking, we're also talking tandem stalls. Is that something that do we count? We don't count those. Those are in addition to the base on the TS. So that's an additional. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that was not within, because that certainly wasn't the intent when we did the TDS parking. So that's good. So those are extra lots, tandem basic. It's like your own driveway at home where you put the car in behind the first car. Okay. The community garden, I noticed that in reading the citizen comments here that lo and behold, most of them mention the community garden. And I'm just I'm pleased to see certainly that there is some contribution towards increasing the garden. I don't know if the people who signed the forms here were aware of that. I'm happy to see that garden expanding, and I'm also wondering if we have opportunities down the road to expand the garden to the east. I know we've sort of brought it up into an easement a little bit, but you know, as this community grows, that's already a very popular garden up there, and with this number of units, I could see the demand for more plots and people who want to do a little bit of gardening. I'm just wondering what the potential is for expanding that garden in the future.
Your Worship, there is a potential. We did discuss the possibility with Parks and Rec and Culture. The challenge, of course, is that we don't have the neighborhood plan being completed, so we're advancing history. But if you look at attachment 6 in the report, you can see that the proposal is to build the lane behind the project, and the lane would essentially end in a turnaround, effectively 2 lots east of the current community garden. The thinking was that lane could essentially be taken south and properties be acquired for community garden purposes. There is an opportunity, absolutely, and that is why we feel that an investment in the community garden at this time makes sense.
Good. Okay. Thank you. I'll be supporting it going ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much, Mayor. How many units are we demolishing to build this building? These buildings?
19.
Your Worship, there's 18 single-family units, single-family lots.
It's not all single-family dwelling. It's apartment, isn't it?
No, these are all.
No, at this time it's 18 single-family lots.
What is the parking standards for here? What kind of parking ratio you got?
The parking requirements, Your Worship, for this location is a TDS area. It's a shoulder area. It will be able to capture reduced parking rates in accordance with the different type of units being proposed, including some reductions for the apartment, for instance. The 2-bedroom units will have some reductions. But by and large, the townhouse units are going to be the standard parking requirement. So we will bring all of the details on the total parking forward to council as part of the development permit. At this point, we don't have the total numbers. They are being obviously required to meet all the parking requirements under the TDS, including both the townhousing and the apartment units.
So how many parking spaces there are in 206 units?
You just said.
You don't know yet.
Your Worship,
Mr. Elway.
again, if Mr. Allegretto from Intercorp may have a number that they are currently working with in terms of the total number of units, although I caution that may change, but if council wishes, the developer may have that number.
Okay, so you'll know how many parking spaces at the public hearing?
Your Worship, yes, we could have a more detailed plan available for the public
Thank you
hearing.
very much.
And they'll certainly know by the development permit when the parking has to be finalized. Okay. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I'll go to parking, which is my very non-favorite thing. I am not in favor of the parking that standard you put down. I've been very blunt about that. But onto the townhouse parking, I think we've learned in the Northeast, and you're going to say, oh, but it's not on rapid transit. Well, so be it. But I think we know in the Northeast, those with single garages are using them as storage places, and if there's no full apron, then they're parking on the street. And I see where they're providing a new street and all that, but I'm hoping that all the pads, the aprons, are going to be big enough to take a car. So that's one of my wishes. The other one is that I do hope that we know the number of parking by the public hearing, because I can tell you for sure that that is going to be a big issue. I'm just starting to get a couple of calls because I have people that live in the neighborhood. So that's going to be a really huge issue with us. And as is how extensive this plan is going to be. And I think when we started talking about it, this was sort of going to be the end of the density going south. And I think we were looking toward, because there's some more expensive homes in the area from Ebert on. So hopefully we're looking at that. I know the neighbors are pretty upset about the apartment at the end of the block, and you can see that by some of the petitions that have been going around. And just for Councillor O'Neill, sometimes instead of people just having one petition which they walk around with, they do a petition out and then they just drop it off at everybody's house so that they can all sign it and send it back. That's how you get 30 or 40 of them looking the same. I guess it's just a different way of doing a petition. Basically, other than some problems with the form and design, which is not together with the rezoning and that, those are my only comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Asmundson.
Thank you very much. I will note in the report on page 7 that they are providing at this time 58 more parking spaces, 31 tandem, 27 driveways above what's required at present. So there is parking. The one question I do have for public hearing is that I'd like to know what the additional parking will be on Foster Avenue. Since we're getting rid of the driveways, we should know roughly what that number would be and how much extra parking that will deal within the neighborhood there. But by the report, it already shows that they are increasing above the bylaw what they need for parking in that development. The other part of this development that I want to make sure, and I guess the public hearing and getting proper information out, is this common green, which is also being as a public right-of-way by reading the report. So this is also for just not the strata here, but for the residents in that area also. And that's over 6,000 square feet, so it's a fairly substantial extra piece of green space for the community in the Coquitlam area, which we've all talked about we needed. So And there's a linkage between that and the community gardens, which is a nice little connection. So I just want to make sure that when it gets into public hearing, people understand, because a lot of people, when you look at it, would naturally assume that that's going to be a private community space. And I think it's important, because even when I read the report, I went back a couple times, yes, that is, as I read in by the right-of-way, it's common space for the general public. I guess I just want to use the general public in that comment. So I really like that from the developer on this package, but I wanted this to go to public hearing, hear from the public. But I think we had, the last public hearing, we had an issue where there was a petition some people had signed, but I think it was what Councillor O'Neill might have been alluding to, is that, you know, sometimes the information that people are provided when they're signing a petition is not the full information. I think Councillor Hodge mentioned about the expansion of the community gardens. I think about this open space here where the tower, the apartment building is actually going to be facing the community garden, and with this open community space is actually a greater distance away, so it will not be on top of anybody. Actually, the townhouses will be more on top of the residents along there than the apartment building would be. So I'll move this through to public hearing. Thank you.
And I'll support you going through to public hearing. I do take a little bit of an issue when a group suggests that the appropriate payment from the developer would be an amenity that would benefit them. And that's essentially what all of the photocopied versions do. I don't think they meant it that way, but it suggests something that first of all, I don't think we're allowed to do that, but it also does create problems for me. But at the same time, I think this is a pretty creative project. I think it has strived to balance community amenity and a pretty livable project, and so I'm prepared to hear what the public has to say about it. And I'll support going to public hearing. And that's the motion before us, first reading and the public hearing.
Just ask that council actually vote on these separately. So the first recommendation is that council give first reading to City of Coquitlam Citywide OCP Amendment Bylaw number 4407, 2013.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously.
Second recommendation is that council give first reading to Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4408, 2013.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
And item 3, or third recommendation, is that both bylaws be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Hodge. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 5 is consideration of fourth and final reading of Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4364, 2012, and authorization for issuance of Development Variance Permit 12014974DV at 1408 Austin Avenue for a proposed triplex development. I would also ask that council vote on these separately. So the first recommendation is that council give fourth and final reading to Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4364, 2012.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This one I cannot support. I believe that there's going to be many problems with the neighborhood in the area on this development, so therefore I cannot support it.
Okay. Other speakers? Motion is fourth and final. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. And before not carried unanimously. Carried unanimously, which except for Councillor Asmundson and Councillor Sikora. Hodge is down at the other end. And before we get to the DVP, I'll ask if there are any speakers. Development variance permit requires a mini public hearing. Are there any speakers to this item? Are there any speakers to the development variance permit that's proposed? Any speakers? I'll declare that closed. Madam Clerk.
The recommendation is that council approve the signing and sealing of development variance permit at 1408 Austin Avenue, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute the permit on behalf of the City of Coquitlam.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, second by Councillor Hodge. Councillor Sikora, are you done?
Sorry.
Sorry, that's
no worries.
my apologies.
Now it's back on. Now we'll kill him again. Okay.
Don't touch the mics.
That's a Freudian. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimous. Oh, carried without Councillor Asmundson and Councillor Sikora this time.
Item 6, letters of support for local immigration partnership program. We have introductory comments by the Manager of Community Planning.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I can provide a few introductory comments on the report. Both Success and Share Family and Community Services, in collaboration with Immigrant Services Society, or ISS, are applying as lead agencies for funding from the Federal Local Immigration Partnership, or LIP, program. The LIP program supports community-based partnerships that increase the community's capacity to be more welcoming and improve outcomes for newcomers through, for example, raising awareness of services for newcomers and better coordination of service delivery to newcomers. This is done through developing local settlement strategies and action plans that are implemented by LIP councils that are comprised of key community members, including local government representatives, senior government representatives, and of course community agencies that provide services for newcomers. In the Coquitlam context, the LIP program will continue the work of the Tri-Cities Welcoming Communities project in helping to implement the action plan that came out of that project. And this program is also consistent with the city's multiculturalism strategic plan. The LIP program could be a major source of funding, potentially up to $200,000 per year, for community-based cultural diversity initiatives in the Tri-Cities. If the city chooses to participate in the LIP program through council or staff participation on the LIP council, this could help the city implement the multiculturalism strategic plan without having to commit significant resources or additional administrative role. Both Success and Share have a long history of providing services to newcomers in the Tri-Cities, and both are very capable of coordinating this program. I also know that recently Success and Share have decided to submit a joint application for this funding instead of submitting competing bids. And given the alignment with the city's multiculturalism strategic plan and the opportunity to continue creating a more welcoming community, it's recommended that Council provide a letter of support for a joint funding bid by Success and Share and endorse the city's participation in the LIP program. And we do have some slightly modified recommendations for Council's consideration based on that outcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the recommendations that we have that are slightly revised are that Council authorize the Mayor to sign and submit on the City's behalf an appropriate letter of support in response to the request from Success and Share Family and Community Services, and to support the City's participation in the Local Immigration Partnership Initiative.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Zakor. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I realize these letters have to go out by Friday, so there's not very much time. But in the staff report, although it's not contained in the recommendation, it says it's also recommended that if requested, the city provide a letter of support to similar organizations applying for this funding. It's unlikely that we'll get those requests in the next 3.5 days, but I would express my view that not all organizations that are similar are of similar quality. We know both these organizations, and I have no difficulty sending letters of support. But there are some organizations that I might not wish to send a letter of support, so I wanted to make that clear, in case somebody knocks on your door on Thursday afternoon.
And at the time, there were, as you may know, conflicting bids, both from organizations that you would probably support, and they have come together.
Yes.
So that was the original staff report said that because the gist was we ought to support those both, and there in fact is a third organization that you probably would support that apparently isn't applying but could have. So it was meant to be somewhat less exclusive, and I thought staff had done a masterful job of dancing across that difficulty.
Thank you.
Point well taken. Okay, Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, just on the point number 2, supporting the city's participation in the LIP initiative as led by the community agency that receives LIP funding. So the city's participation, according to page 3, would involve a staff person up to 6 hours a month and possibly a city council representative to the LIP Council. Do we need to discuss that? I know that in the funding, financial implications, this 5 to 6 hours of staff time per month is apparently available somehow. It will probably change priorities. Somebody doing something now won't be doing it, and we'll be doing this. But that's almost a full day a month. So just and then the city council representative. I don't know how necessary that is. Is there some staff person can speak to that about whether how badly that's needed?
In other words, it's not just lip service they're asking for on the LIP funding. They're asking for real contributions.
Yes, through the chair. It's my understanding with the Tri-Cities Welcoming Communities Project, we did have a staff, a member, one of our social planners, participate in that process. And we also took a good look at our work plan and saw that this initiative, the LIP funding initiative, aligns well with implementing our multiculturalism strategic plan. So we felt that those 5 to 6 hours a month could be accommodated. Again, the benefits of receiving that funding could be widespread in the community.
Good. And can you speak to the need, or is it just kind of a wish list thing for a city council representative, or how necessary is that, or staff handle this by itself? Anybody volunteer?
Your Worship, I think we were trying to provide some flexibility with this report, to be honest. At the time, there was a couple of groups applying. We were encouraging them to come together, pool their efforts. This has come together fairly quickly, and we wanted to have the flexibility that if there was interest at council to get plugged in. Obviously, we want to put that before council for your consideration. At this point, though, if the city supports it, the staff will be there to represent the city of Coquitlam. We can always report back in time to see how it progresses, how other municipal members are participating. We can certainly keep you apprised that way, and if there's a need or an interest in having a council representative. So what we're trying to do is present that opportunity if council want to consider it. If not, we'll keep you posted on how it unfolds.
Well, I'm happy to go forward with it with just the staff involvement, and if a need for a city council representative is seen, that you can report back to us, and we'd consider it then. So I would support the recommendation as it stands right now. Thank you.
Okay. No other speakers? Okay. The motion is a letter. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Next two items are onward transmittal items. Item number 7 is council member appointments to advisory and statutory committees and other bodies. The recommendation is that council approve the appended list of council member appointments to certain advisory committees, statutory committees, and other identified bodies.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Asmundson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. I thank all those that have stepped up.
Item 8 are the citizen
With a heavy
appointments.
sigh, apparently. My mother would say, "Espire à faire marcher des moulins à vent," which is French for a sigh strong enough to turn a windmill. Sorry. Go ahead.
Item 8 are citizen appointments to the Coquitlam Evergreen Line Public Art Task Force. The recommendation is that council approve the citizen appointments to the Coquitlam Evergreen Line Public Art Task Force as set out in attachment 1 to the staff report.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Sikora. Great volunteers. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously again, with our thanks. Okay.
Other business item?
I've added one business item that's a little bit urgent, and council will recognize it as soon as we show it here. The challenge right now, and it's partly created by, I think, the additional straw that broke the camel's back is created by.
So this is the off-ramp from Highway 1 westbound onto Brunette into New Westminster. This off-ramp...
There we go. I'll describe it instead. You can drag it to the middle of the screen. This is the off-ramp from Brunette westbound And because of the backup of traffic on trying to get onto this, through this light, the light then turns green for a minute or 2 minutes at a time, backing traffic up onto Brunette. That's because of a priority switch that's down underneath the overpass to make it so that traffic doesn't back up onto the freeway and create a rear-end collision risk. Of course, since it's uphill, we'll end up with a fully loaded truck that slows everything down, and then no one's going through across the overpass during that period, and sometimes 15, 20 seconds where no one goes through the intersection, and then they'll get stopped again at the next traffic light because they've just changed the movements on the eastbound Highway 1 off-ramp to be a traffic light on the other side of the freeway there. It's getting to the point now where traffic can't get during rush hour from Coquitlam to New Westminster across the Brunette overpass, and of course, since it can't get across the Bailey Bridge with any predictability, we're hearing more and more cases, more and more, I've heard 2 now, of someone who was stuck in traffic for 20 minutes trying to get to our regional hospital emergency ward. This is getting to be an unworkable situation entirely, because the actual Brunette movement will be 20 seconds or 30 seconds out of every 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and all because of this mess here. So now it's turned green again. The next movie, the next one film is shorter, and it shows the freeway. This is at the King Edward Overpass, and that's the backup to get onto that movement at the off-ramp for at Brunette to New Westminster, and that backup is back to the bridge. So the sensor isn't working. Obviously, they've disabled the sensor because it simply doesn't function anymore. And I'm going to ask Mr. Steblin if we can incorporate into our current resolution process some mechanism that includes the consideration of this. This has only started in the last few weeks, undoubtedly because of a number of issues associated with the Bailey Bridge and such.
From my perspective, this would be a very good thing to add to the dispute. I did have a meeting with the New West city manager on the process that we should go through, and it was their request, actually, that we make the issue broader than simply the Bailey Bridge. They have also some concerns about broader transportation issues. We're having another meeting next week to sort of like go through the terms of reference and how we should proceed in this regard. And I'll certainly add this to that meeting and for potential inclusion in the terms of reference along with the issues that New West want to add in, all for report back to council in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, the result of this is that for about 3/4 of the time during rush hour, there are no lanes going from Coquitlam to New Westminster. So obviously this does have to be added, and I don't know if I see Councillor Asmundson and perhaps has a comment as well. He, driving on the roads every day as much as he does, undoubtedly runs into this stuff. Councillor Asmundson.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I greatly appreciate you bringing this up, especially the footage here to show the complications here. We have dealt with the one light on the overpass for a number of years and the backup into Coquitlam that it attributes to it. One of the issues is the lack of between the cities on the replacement of the Brunette overpass to the standards, and that's probably one of the biggest issues there. The second problem now is that next light now, which is taking the traffic that used to go eastbound to come off to go onto Brunette Overpass to go east onto Low Wheat Highway has now been taken off and moved to the ramp that takes you, used to be off the eastbound freeway to go onto into New Westminster. Now you have to take a separate lane on that same exit to come up to a light to make a left, which adds an extra turning moment, an extra delay in signalization down at that point, which is now you have to stop traffic coming out of New Westminster because of that light and backing up that traffic coming out, plus the traffic going in. So it is quite a mess right now, and something needs to be done. I thank our staff for being on the radar. And Mayor Stewart, I thank you for bringing this in this field, this issue here, because it's part of some of the issues we're dealing with about having goods movement. Part of my issues about the hospital and where it's located. If we can't get there, it doesn't make a lot of sense. We can't get to our regional trauma hospital without any great ease. Thank you, Mayor Stewart.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Rasmussen, second by Councillor Hodge to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll have question period on any items on tonight's agenda. Are there any questions on tonight's agenda? Any questions on tonight's agenda? Please step forward and grab the microphone. We'll state your name and address. No preambles, just questions. You're allowed up to 2 minutes. We'll see what we can do to answer your questions. Mr. Dick?
Hi. Yeah, my name's Rodney Dick. I live at 25357 100th Avenue, Maple Ridge, and I own 1430 Pipeline.
Yep.
And you people have turned my application down since 2003 till today for the excavation of an approved residential building lot. And in 2003, you people approved 2-to-1 slope for your building, under your current building bylaw, and I meet that requirements. And I have engineering documents since 2003 to 4 that accept everything I'm doing on my property. And Raul has turned it down again, and like Ron Beasley says, Raul's not an engineer, and all the people I hire are professional engineers. So, you know, I'm just curious on why you turned my application down.
Okay, well, it was a staff recommendation. Mr. Avleva.
Your Worship, Mr. Dick is well aware of the process we've undergone on this application. Mr. Dick and I are in conversation weekly. Mr. Dick is also aware of why the previous application for a conservation permit a couple of years ago was closed by staff because of inactivity following a failure on the part of the applicant and to essentially complete technical engineering requirements under the conservation bylaw to address the requirements of a conservation permit. So we've been very clear in our communication to Mr. Dick. The report on today's agenda has a letter that I sent to Mr. Dick and his consulting engineer on outstanding requirements for his conservation permit. Mr. Dick is well aware that he did not attend meetings, did not want his consultants to attend meetings with the city to have further explanations of outstanding requirements. Mr. Dick is well aware that he requested that this permit be brought forward to council despite the fact that it was incomplete. So staff's position is very clear in the reports.
My report is complete. It's a letter of insurance by my engineer, and it has been properly approved, council approved the 2-to-1 slope. And if you want to get Golder and Associates to review the report, like I've asked you to do it, because you're not qualified, right? And I would suspect that you hire Golder again and get them to get assured that this is only a residential lot. It's not a major development. It's a building lot that was approved by council April 24th, 1959. And so far, I think you guys have spent $150,000 in legal expenses. And it's going to continue on, like I told the Supreme Court Justice, until I get a permit from Coquitlam, we will be in court. And that's where we'll be again in a week. So, you know, it's either hire Golder to review my paperwork, a professional person, but you're not qualified, Roel. That's the way it is. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Are there any other questions on tonight's agenda? Any other questions? Any other questions? Thank you all. Ooh, is there one there? I don't want to miss anybody because I wouldn't want to miss anybody. Okay. Thank you all. Have a good evening.